I worked night shift, and a co-worker and I were both driving down a county road after work, probably around 4:45 a.m., still dark outside. I saw his taillights get brighter, like he was hitting his brakes. Then he swerves down into the ditch line and comes back out on the road and keeps going. As I approached the same area, I see this really tall, black figure walking in the road. It's moving in a very weird, unnatural gait, like it was kind of blowing in the wind, but it clearly wasn't. I first thought it was a really tall person wrapped up in a big black blanket because I didn't see any arms or head, just two big legs and a torso. I had to swerve over to avoid it too, but I basically came to a full stop, and the thing walks past my driver's window. It had to have been around 7 foot tall, as it was leaning forward, and was at least a foot or so taller than the top of my vehicle. As it got behind my vehicle, I could see the taillights illuminating its legs, but couldn't make out any details, like hair or anything like clothing. Just large, thick, black legs. I took off down the road once it was behind me and saw that my coworker pulled into a gravel parking lot, so I pulled up beside him. He's freaking out asking if I saw it, and how it didn't have a head, and other ramblings. I said we should go back and try to see what the hell this thing is, because it seemed oblivious to us driving. He didn't want to, but he ended up following behind me. We drove back the way we came, and in around the same area, there was a large black dog laying across the road. This was not your normal size canine. It was much larger than any normal dog, but it looked dead. It wasn't there when we just drove through there less than 3 or so minutes beforehand. Anyway, I decided I was going to get out and go see if it's alive or not, and move it off to the side of the road because you can't really drive around it without going off the edge of the road on either side, because the way it was laying across the road. As I get about 15 feet away, it raises its head up and looks back at me. Its eyes are glowing yellow, but I still say that was due to the vehicle lights causing eye shine. It lets out a low, deep, rumbling guttural growl, and I stop instantly. It attempts to stand up. Seems like it has some sort of issues with its front legs, but it stands up and continues to stand up, on 2 legs, like a person would. It only stood on its back legs for a second or two, enough time for it to look at me, but then it hunkers back down to what looks like on all fours and runs off to the wooded area. But there's a pretty tall fence there, so I don't really know how it managed to disappear because it would have had to go over, under, or through the fence. I also don't think it was using its front legs when it ran off, because I never saw them really moving. Now after all this, there was one last strange happening. My coworker gets out of his car after the dog thing ran off, and he comes up to me to basically say, "What the fuck was that?" And as we are talking, I noticed a mouse standing between us. It was also on its hind legs, kind of sitting as it is, washing its face. I nudged it with my shoe, and it doesn't even seem to care. Kind of like the first thing that was walking, it was completely oblivious to our presence. It just kept on cleaning itself. We left and went our separate ways. I woke up later in the day and started looking into werewolves and come across dogman stories. The only thing I will say about all of that is, this didn't have the hands and feet like is often claimed by witnesses. It had normal dog paws. It just had a large black wolf-style look about itself, but its fur was really fluffy, which didn't really seem to match with the normal wolf-type fur. It wasn't a bear, it didn't have mange. I know the difference between a bear or something like that. It just looked like a very large black dog. The first thing we saw, some people said sounds like a Fresno nightcrawler, but those have been white in appearance and not nearly as thick and tall. Someone recently asked if maybe it had wings, and that's what was concealing its arms and head, as if they were draped around the front of it. I never thought about that before, and can't say one way or another because I didn't see any sort of details on its body, just blackness. The way it moved just seemed very odd, otherworldly. I always think of those inflatable tube man that flap around in the wind at car dealers or some sort of events when I try to describe its movements. Just really weird. The mouse. That might be the oddest thing to me because I physically touched it, so I know it was real, but it just didn't seem to care. It wasn't until recently I made the connection that all 3 of the creatures were on 2 legs at one point. Are they all connected? Who knows? I never saw anything like that ever again, and I only live about 4 miles from where it happened, and I drive through that area often. I wish I had more answers, but all I get is more questions. As someone who's been pretty skeptical most of my life, I've tried to explain it away in some logical manner, but I can't. I have said the dog was playing with the mouse, must have got hit, and its front legs were hurt. That would explain why it was walking on its back legs and why the movement seemed unnatural. The mouse was traumatized from the dog messing with it. That explains why it looked all wet and why it was cleaning itself. That's the version I accepted for many years. The only problem with that is whatever was originally walking down the road was so much larger than the dog. When the dog stood up, it was maybe 6 foot tall, but whatever walked by my window was at least 7 foot leaning forward. The walking torso was also a lot thicker than the dog, as the legs were very thick. The dogs were normal dog legs. Out of all the times people want to get out of work a little early, this was the one time where I wish we wouldn't have. But then again, I also enjoy looking into this sort of stuff now. I was still living with my parents when I was younger. I slept in the living room. We didn't have a big apartment, so they had the one bedroom. I didn't mind. The living room had the big television and the pull-out couch was comfy enough. So one night, I'm lying down, watching some Adult Swim, when I begin to drift off. I turned my body over to get more comfortable, but I had this feeling like I didn't want my back facing the dining room and kitchen area. At this point, the TV is providing the only light in the apartment, and it was big enough that it provided some light into the kitchen and dining area. Well, when I turned to face the dining area at this point, after that uncomfortable feeling, I saw something that made my heart drop. I saw what appeared to be a figure standing just outside the entrance to the kitchen, next to the dining room table. Now in that apartment, there's a tiny step to step up to into the dining area, and after I rubbed my eyes to make sure I was truly seeing what I was seeing, the shadow figure took a step down the tiny step from the dining area. I never moved so fast in my life, and I jumped out of my bed and flipped the light on next to the pull-out couch as fast as humanly possible. The figure was about 5'10", 6 feet tall and totally featureless, just shadow-looking. With the light on in the living room, now illuminating most of the apartment, I kept my eyes locked on the dining area. I didn't move from my spot the rest of the night, and frankly, was quite frozen with fear. My mum eventually woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom and asked me what was wrong and what happened. She chalked it up to the really bad nightmare, but I knew what I saw. I've only had one other confirmed encounter with this being, and two, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it is the same creature. The other confirmed sighting happened about 3 or 4 years after, when I was back visiting from college. I was playing video games late when something told me to look behind me. It just felt like there were eyes on me. Well, I turn around and there it is. I yelled and flipped on the light again as fast as I could, and again, it disappears. The morning after this happened, I sat my parents down and we spoke about it. They claim to have never seen this being, and they don't feel any oppressive force in the apartment, but they assured me they believe me, and they wanted me to feel safe there. These 2 encounters are not confirmed as the being, but I think relate to it. I had an ex-girlfriend sleeping over, and I was watching TV while she played her Nintendo Switch. She claimed to me something that sounded like a yell came from the kitchen area, and she was really freaked out. Mind you, I didn't hear this one because I had my video game headset on, but she was so freaked out it didn't seem like she was lying. Finally, I was on the phone late one night with a friend from Atlanta, and we were just talking and catching up. I had fallen asleep on the phone at one point, and I woke up with my phone almost dead and a voicemail from my friend. She claimed that after I fell asleep, she heard a violent scream on the other end of the line and thought something bad had happened to me. I called her back, and thankfully she was still awake, and she told me something screamed that sounded terrifying, and it didn't sound anything like me. Mind you, this scream never woke me up and the TV was not on. I was always on the fence with the supernatural and paranormal, but these events made me a true believer.